All right, John. Here, we're going to talk about Epstein. I know it's a very hot topic. I want to start off by saying, what is MCC in New York? Explain to everybody, all the viewers, what is MCC?
MCC, I spent 4.5 years there, is a holding facility for guys around the country, and that's facing federal charges in different jurisdictions. Some of them are moved there, some of them are state inmates waiting federal charges. So it's a holdover facility before you get to a designation after you're sentenced if you lose your case.
You know, Spending time at MCC, Epstein was there, right? So, walk us through once he gets arrested and he gets to MCC. Walk us through what happens.
So when you first get to MCC, like most facilities, you go through intake. And in intake, they'll take pictures, fingerprint you, designate what floor you're going to go to, why you're going to go there, and set a file for you. And he's a high-profile inmate. So he's probably the highest profile inmate in the country at the time. So he'll go where, we went to. And that was the 10th floor. The 10th floor is where they put terrorists, they put top gangsters, they put people that are very, very high profile, dangerous, and well known. Guys like Madoff probably were up there, I would think, even though it's a money crime, because of how big his notoriety was. Epstein was on 10 because of same thing. And guys like us are up there on 10.
Describe us the cell. How's that cell? And, what's the feeling when that door's locked?
Cell is a stainless steel toilet, stainless steel sink, fluorescent, like very, very light light. It's not bright at all. It's fluorescent. It's kind of weird feeling when you're in a room. You have a steel door that you can't penetrate. You have a little hole, mail slot that opens in the middle of the door, a little bit below the middle of the door, where they feed you 3 times a day. You have a window that's very narrow. You really can't see out of it. And if the location is nothing to see anyway, but the rest of the jail, another part of the jail building. But it's wired and it's thick plexiglass. The cells are concrete walls. It's very damp inside. In the winter, it's very cold. In the summer, it's very hot, extreme.
You have sheets on the bed, or how's it?
If you're on a suicide watch cell, no, you don't have sheets. You wear like a paper towel. It's a cloth that you wear over your head. No underwear, no socks, no shoes, no nothing that you can hurt yourself, kill yourself with. If that paper that you're wearing around you, it's like a hospital gown made of like a strong paper towel. Baby blue usually is the color when you're on suicide watch.
For a high profile inmate like Epstein, why wasn't there a guard posted 24/7 at his door?
Well, you don't need to because you have cameras on each corner of the cell, and you also have a camera up the tier on both sides. Everybody's in solitary confinement cells. You're not getting out. Your movement is possibly medical comes to your door, but if there's something seriously wrong with you, they'll take you out for x-rays or something. Not out of the building, you just out of the floor to medical. They'll close the movement down through the whole building for somebody like him to move.
Walk us through what a suicide watch actually looks like in federal prison. How big of a deal is it, and how big of a deal is it that they took him off a few days prior to him doing suicide?
Well, I don't, first of all, I don't believe they took him off suicide prior to that. I think he would have stayed on there because his threat level of trying to kill himself, supposedly, they can't just take him off. There's an evaluation to take him off, but they claim they took him off. But still, even if they took him off, but those cells are no different than the normal cells. They're cameraed up. Most of them have a shower in the corner that will tell you on a speaker when they look at you through the camera, whether it's 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, they'll turn on the water, tell you, inmate, whatever your number is, get up and shower. They leave it on for about 10 minutes, ice cold. If you don't get up, they turn it off. If you get up, you go shower and you go lay back down again. There is no pillow. There is no threading in the mat. There's a, I guess it's like 2-inch mat that you sleep on, but there's no threading, so you can't pull the threading out, so you could try to hang yourself with anything. So that also, you don't have anything like that in the cell. There's no way you could kill yourself in a suicide cell. Sometimes they station an inmate out as a volunteer to sit in front, kind of what you just said. I don't know his situation, if they did it or not. That's a volunteer thing. But again, you don't need it. You have cameras up and down the tier, and you have cameras in the cell. So if something is more than several eyes on you on that camera is at the main floor you're on the 10th floor, and it's 2 other locations. So there's several people that manning those cameras on a constant basis. Then there's a control room where there's a bunch of people looking at different cameras through the whole prison.
His cellmate was transferred, and they never put anyone new in there. How critical was that mistake?
Well, you have a lot of single man cells, double man cells. It depends on, how much room are in solitary confinement at that time. If there's room, and if you're a notoriety, if you got big notoriety, sometimes they won't put you. If you have influence in the jail, and some of the guards, they'll do you a favor and not put you in with somebody. Some guys like company in there so they can talk. Most guys that have been in jails don't want the company. They want the freedom of staying in a cell. As crazy as it sounds, that you just want to be left alone. It's not a mistake at all. Some inmates that are high profile, they don't put anybody in with them for safety reasons. And sometimes inmates that are high profile and they have little notoriety, and they know to some of the guards, if the jail's not crowded at that time, they'll leave them in a single man cell. If you're in solitary confinement for a lengthy amount of time, for a year, 6 months, 2 years, whatever, they won't put somebody in with you. They'll give it to guys that just came into solitary confinement. So you have the freedom of walking around your cell naked or whatever, and you don't have anybody in the cell with you.
The guards skipped required rounds and then faked the logs. How was that even possible without being caught in real time?
That's not possible. So some of this is outright lies because of the cameras. That's, first thing. So they're not skipping rounds. Cameras show that they're getting up and they're walking through the tier. If they're not walking through the tier, you have checkpoints too. They have lieutenants on there, captains on that, on floors that do their rounds. You have medical teams that do their rounds. You have religious services that do theirs. You have trustees that are washing floors and dropping off food. There's a million people moving around through there, giving injections, giving medications, psychology. I can go on and on. There's tours from the warden for whoever's coming through there for whatever reason.
2 of the cameras near the Epstein cell supposedly malfunction. John, how does a federal prison lose video at this exact time of a death like this?
Impossible for anybody that's watching this. Those videos and those cameras don't go down. And if they went down in that man's cell, who's the number 1 prisoner in the country, they would just throw me or anybody else out of their cell and pack us out and put them into his cell and switch him into that cell. These are impossibilities that they're trying to sell for the naive public that don't know any better. But any guard, any lawyer, any federal agent, anybody that knows anything about the jail system, you work for a BOP, Bureau of Prisons, you understand this is an outright lie.
The footage that was released, experts say it was raw. It wasn't raw video at all. That had been processed to Adobe Premiere Pro. I'm an editor. I use Adobe Premiere Pro to put these things together. That means it was stitched together. Why would the government release an edited version instead of the raw feed directly from the cameras?
First off, again, there's several camera space. So even if 2 cameras go down, there's other cameras that are backed up. There's a control room. There's several rooms that are carrying those videos that have raw footage. So this is, again, an outright lie. This is complete falsity of narrative that they're trying to sell to the public that doesn't know any better. But there's too many people that do know about the prison system that know this is a lie.
Just by those cameras going down and them stitching this together, does that automatically make this a suspicious case?
Oh, it's not suspicious to me at all, this case. It's blatant murder.
If parts of the system were down or doctored, Is it still possible that someone slipped in, or would other security measures have caught that?
Oh, they never slip in. I could give you different scenarios what happened, in my opinion. Um, and these are, I would think, are pretty accurate. Uh, the two guards that were working on duty were CIA operatives. They weren't guards. They look at the schedule. The schedule's up. They put two fake names up there. They were actually working the tier. So they work the tier. People go to sleep at certain hours for the most part, and they walk into his cell and they kill him when they feel like it. They turn the camera off. They turn it off 45 seconds, 1 minute, whatever long they think that's going to take them to maneuver that body and to kill him. That's one scenario of it. Second scenario is at chow time at 4:30 or earlier. They could have gave him a dose of something to put him out, and then the second time, but for dinner time, they gave him something else, knocked him out, went into the cell, and they killed him easily without any kind of struggle. Third thing is they came to his cell because these are routine things. They tell him inmate something or other, whatever his number is. Epstein, turn around. When you get cuffed up, you put your hands out behind your back into the mail slot. They cuff you. So if there's any marks on your hands, there are always marks on your head because we're always cuffed. So that's not going to be suspicious for autopsy. Once he does that, they kill him and take the cuffs off him and lay him back down, go back out, turn the cameras back on, and they leave the unit. And so the time they said they were sleeping is actually when they left. And then the next duty officers come on at whatever hour, 5 minutes later, 2 minutes later, and they walk in and they find the guy dead. That to me is more of the scenario that happened. And lastly, they could have brought in two inmates to say they were inmates, but they're really operatives. They're in another cell, and they give them keys. They walk out of their cell when they think the time is right. They go in and they kill them. There's a lot of scenarios that could have happened if it was done by the CIA, which I believe it was.
If that's possible, how do they avoid all these checks and balances? I mean, you got lieutenants, you got supervisors, you got camera audits. How do they skip all this?
One person has to be on the know there, and that's the warden. Besides that, there's nobody else. There's about 6 to 8 counts a day, depending on the prison, and no count could be cleared without a prison count. They can't fall asleep. This is an impossibility. Without that, the building doesn't clear, and if the building doesn't clear, there's no movement for anything at all. Anybody that's supposed to go home, anybody switch shifts, there is no movement completely because they're worried about somebody that was killed, possibly. They're worried about the hostage situation of a guard. They're worried about the guards are being tortured, hurt, killed. So they would send up what they call the goon squad, the turtle club, or whatever you want to call it. There's a million names for them. And if there's still no movement, no jail in the city would be moved anywhere in New York.
Based on what you know, was Epstein's death suicide by hanging even physically possible? You served time in there. Do you think that's possible?
Suicide, the suicides are random, but not in his situation, not with the cameras. There's too many variables that it was impossible for him to kill himself. Between the cameras, between the high profile, there was too many things that happened that would just never happen. Like what I just said. So he was murdered. That's for sure.
The medical examiner called it a suicide, but private pathologists said the injuries looked more like homicide. What's your thoughts on that?
Again, they didn't like the choice of the pathologist, and the first coroner said that it was he believed it was foul play. And then they got somebody that fit the script of what they wanted said. Again, not possible. Also, from what I understand, they moved the body to a hospital and not the morgue directly. I don't know if that's true or not. That's hearsay. I don't know. I have direct information.
I mean, in your opinion, I know you think it's an inside job, but you're going to have critics on, commenting that, it was incompetence. What do you think? Inside job or incompetence? I mean, how do you prove that?
Well, it's simple. Like I said, it can't be incompetence because they go from floor to floor. Each guard walks, he does a count. He tells the guy, move your foot, move your hand, because you're sleeping at night. They bang the door. They hit the rack in dorm kind of cells. And each floor's got a pass. They call into control the number of inmates that are supposed to be there. They counter check it with the second guard that's working on duty with them. They do it from floor to floor. If one floor does not clear, nothing moves again. So there's no way they could have fell asleep. They get a phone call upstairs to wake up if they are sleeping, which is ridiculous. You don't have two guards falling asleep at the same time. This is a joke to even say this again. This is insulting. But even if the case was they did fall asleep, they get a phone call immediately. And if they don't answer that phone immediately, they're sending up a squad. And they're looking at all the cameras on that floor. It just doesn't, it can't happen. Not that it just doesn't happen. It's impossible to happen. So anybody that knows the jail system knows this is bullshit.
And you know what? I want to talk about why you think they're not releasing the Epstein files. I want to go back into the background. At first, Pam Bondi comes out, hands out binders to influencers, makes this big media spectacle, then total silence. And now they're denying the files exist. I mean, what's really happening here?
Well, here's one thing I'll tell you, for sure. When the president was running for the presidency, I'm talking to President Trump. So I'll get this out of the way for the people that are trying to accuse President Trump of having something to do with Epstein Island. The Democratic Party would have blasted that all over the place the way they attacked him if he even had anything to do with it. Second, Epstein's own lawyer said he's the only one who helped to try to put justice against Epstein. So that nonsense is not accurate. Now, as far as, what was your question? So again, with the files, you don't need the files. All you need is Giselle Maxwell. So I don't even care what the files say. So when people are asking for these files, we don't need it. You have her. She can give the information about it. Everybody that was, listen, any FBI agent that works a case against me or against anybody else attacks anybody that's involved with that case under us. So they would get information from Giselle Maxwell. Anybody that didn't do that serious of a crime, pressure them and say you're going to go to jail unless you give up more names, and you'll have all the list of names. We know that Gates was there, a couple dozen times. We know President Clinton was there. We know Prince Andrew was there. We know the witness against Prince Andrew settled for a civil case. She miraculously also dies of suicide. This is obvious stuff to anybody who's been in the street. Of course, everybody's dying of suicides. But, you have high-ranking positioned people, whether they're judges in this country, senators, world leaders of other countries. We don't know who was there. And the problem becomes an international debacle besides America. People are thinking, okay, they're just Americans that were involved with Epstein. No, but there's a lot. There was Burns from the CIA that was friendly with Epstein. So how does the head of the CIA, what is he doing with Epstein? What is he going to his house after his conviction for? And he said he went there for advice, financial advice. These are ridiculous statements from these people.
And, we recently heard about Virginia Giuffre. I think she was the victim of Jeffrey Epstein. First, she got hit by a school bus. And then I think she passed away. I don't know if it was suicide or from her injuries, I think. Yeah, it was from her injuries, I believe. How odd is that?
Of course, these odds are incredible. It's no different than the chefs of the chef who died by Obama's house in the water. He was an expert swimmer. He died, and the chef before him, he died on a hiking trip in the water. I mean, people want to believe this stuff, then go ahead. I know what I used to do for a living. I don't believe in coincidences. These guys are knowledgeable people that were in the White House around presidents like Obama, knew too much. And to me, it's foul play.
Do you think those Epstein files will ever be released to the public, or do you think this is one of those cases that are going to be buried forever?
I think a lot of this is, and I said this on Newsmax, when I was on Newsmax, I think the reason why these files aren't coming out are out of president's control. I think he wants them released. There's things that obviously the Attorney General doesn't want to release them for a reason. I think it's for the benefit of the country, as bad as that sounds. You like to see justice. But again, if you want justice and you want those names, you don't need the grand jury minutes. You don't need a witness list. You don't need to know who was on the island. All you need is Giselle Maxwell. She'll talk. And if you give her a 5-year difference in sentence or a 10-year difference in sentence, she'll talk all day and night. But for some reason, they don't want to ask her who was on that island. Who did she facilitate the prostitutions and these kids for? What the leaders were on that floor. Is her life in danger? I've always believed her life's in danger too. Today, tomorrow, even when she's released. She's, for her to get a heart attack or her to come up with some disease or her to be murdered or suicide, I believe something's in her destiny. Unless she made several copies of everything and gave it to somebody. But again, it took forever for, the agencies to go to Epstein Island and let anybody on that island, and they took everything that was out of there. Why?
When we think about the president, right, an average person like you, me or you, we think, he's got the final word and everything. To be honest, I think that president doesn't have as much power as the American people think they have. I think there's people around him that are probably making those decisions for the president, where the president doesn't have that final word, like we all think. What do you think about that?
Well, one thing the president proved is a deep state that's very powerful, that he's continued to fight. Actually, he's made some progress, but he hasn't made that much progress what people think. Because when he's out of office, I think they're going to come right back at it. They're that embedded in our country. But the thing that I was saying before that, Epstein Island had all kinds of surveillance tapes and cameras. Where are they? How come nobody's talking about these cameras everywhere? Where's all his surveillance? Where's all his videos? He saved everything. I don't need a list. I don't need any witnesses. They have cameras. Would they do with all these cameras with that? Forget about the airplane logs. You have two things you need. All that surveillance that Epstein had at his house, his cameras. He had security all over the place on that island. And you also have, Giselle Maxwell. You don't need anything else. You don't need anything from Pam Bondi. So why isn't anybody asking, where's these videos? Where's all the surveillance tapes?
There's some extremely powerful people on that list. Not just your average names, but, you got Prince, you got billionaires, you got people who run the country. The question is, what are they doing on that list?
Well, you had, I'm not a big fan at all of Gates, and you have his own wife divorcing him and basically accusing him of doing something very shady, low life, that she didn't want nothing to do with him. She was disgusted that he was on that island. So obviously she knows what he did or believes what he did. You had President Clinton on there 26 or 28 times. I mean, what could you possibly be doing? It's like anything else. I was a gangster in my past. I stayed with gangsters. Guys that are ball players stay with other ball players. Just for the most part, that's you are who your company is. So if Epstein's doing that and these guys are staying with him, I guess they are what their company is. You don't have things in common with somebody that, if you're a much different person. That's why President Trump kicked Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago, didn't let him stay there. He was very hard on him and he didn't want nothing to do with him.
One of the questions that I think everybody's asking is, what is the obsession with young girls and powerful men? I mean, you got this whole story revolves around underage girls, Epstein with underage girls, and then you have all these powerful people with underage girls. How do you explain that connection?
I think like anything else, it's like any of us when we're young. We want power, we want money, and you think the connection of knowing these guys and most of these girls were probably, girls that come from broken homes or had issues, and they think they can, they met somebody that can make them successful and they can get out of wherever they're from. And they're with rich people that can put them in good positions. But, they're young, so they're naive, and they're not realizing to get into those positions, you're going to have to get into a different position sexually first before you get anything, and they're going to manipulate you, and they're not going to give you nothing anyway.
Maxwell's father, there was rumors that he was a spy. Give us your thoughts on that.
Maxwell's father, people don't know that he also was indicted and accused of stealing millions of dollars when he passed away. And there was people that were involved with him also that were, I believe it was France, that also they said they committed suicide. So, there's a lot that's going on in the background of some of this that people really are not realizing the full picture. Like I said, the CIA Director Burns was involved with Epstein. It's some sort of friendship with him. It just, the level that it carried to is incredible. And was Epstein a Mossad? There's rumors that he was. He was a guy that was broke initially and became very, very wealthy quickly. Some of this stuff doesn't make sense.
A lot of the money is unexplained. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars that he received in his accounts, and they can't account for that. Do you think he was working for either the Mossad or the CIA and try to entrapping some of these leaderships and gaining evidence, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely think he was working, I don't think he was working for our country. I think he was working for another country, whether it was Mossad or somebody else. But I think a lot of that money was bribe money because he entrapped a lot of these people. That's why I said the biggest thing is, where's the security? This guy had security cameras on everything, all his houses, all his properties, on his island. Where are all those tapes and all those security footage? No one talks about that. So they went there and they cleaned everything out, and no one's ever spoken about it again. So to me, that's the golden goose right there. Where is that? And again, Maxwell, if everybody wants the answer, all you got to do is put her on camera, put her on the Congress floor, and ask her or ask away. She'll answer.
Like organized crime, right? You have people who give up and become informants because of jail time served or because of they're looking at all this. Maxwell hasn't cracked yet. Why do you think?
Maxwell wants to crack. It's not that she didn't crack. They're not giving her an opportunity. Nobody wants her to talk. They don't want to hear the names that she can give. Why would they want her to talk? Then she gives up super names, whether it's exactly what Prince Andrew did or didn't do, whether what President Clinton did or didn't do, and whoever else was on that island didn't or did do, whether it's Burns or Gates or whoever. These are multi powerful billionaires, and they're world-renowned people besides. You're talking about somebody in the CIA to that extent. How much do they have? I know there's pictures with Judge Roberts sitting on a couch with Maxwell with their legs entangled. Was he corrupted, or was that just a picture? Nobody knows, but if you let Maxwell talk and say, here's your freedom, why wouldn't you offer it to her? She couldn't be facilitating these young girls and prostitutes for nobody. So why don't you want to know the names that, let the public know those names? What's behind that? And, I think, people think it's just this country, but when you start talking about maybe it's a prince from another country, maybe it's a president from another country, it's a leader of NATO, who knows, who they could be. We don't know. That would bring world turmoil. And then the other part is maybe it's used as, no different than J. Edgar Hoover used it. As power to maneuver them in the direction that you want the country. And they have not only the person that you have, that you know about, but they have influence on other people, so you can tell them, listen, we want the vote this way, we want that, we want this, and now they're agreeing because you have them. So some of this for the better good, maybe.
Now, trying to understand the psychology of this, because obviously, with the mafia, they tell you, hey, don't get on social media if you're a made member. They don't want you doing certain things. Why would people like Bill Clinton, a sitting president at the time, former president now, and then you got Prince Andrew, probably one of the most powerful people on this planet. Why would they risk this stuff to go and do this?
Well, if you were married to Hillary Clinton, you'd go to the island. She is one of the most unliked, miserable people in the world. Who knows? Who knows? What he was thinking. I mean, he was with, he was a womanizer. Bill Clinton was a little bit of a playboy, but was he with underage, girls that he was there? Maybe he was just with prostitutes. Maybe he was with several women at the same time. Who knows what his fetish was? But to be on that island with this guy. I believe, he obviously had some very personal relationship with Epstein. So again, why aren't they letting Maxwell talk?
Why do you think, or where are they getting these girls from? I mean, your Epstein Island is way out there. I mean, how are they bringing these girls in? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you can bring a young girl, 16, with fake ID that's dancing in some strip club that doesn't have any money. She's sexy, she's cute. Maxwell sees her, says to her, "I can change your life. I can make you rich. I can bring you to this island. It's a vacation." She sells her a dream. A 15-year-old runaway girl. They go to, wherever these girls, they find drug addicts. I mean, there's a slew of them. There's troubled people with, broken homes. They run into them. They meet them in different wherever she's meeting them, wherever she's, reeling them in and grooming them from. There's a million homeless girls out there and shelters and rehabs and drug issues that they maneuvered. And young kids are easy to maneuver, especially if it's a woman that's maneuvering for you because she's telling them, "You're beautiful. I can help you. I know what it is that they're getting to the soft side. Maybe they don't have a mom." And she grooms them and brings them there, thinking that they're gonna, their life's gonna turn around. They're gonna be with these guys. They make them feel comfortable. They treat them well probably when they first get there, and then they start the sexual activity. Who knows when they're there? If they were drugging them at the same time.
What do you think, or why do you think they haven't touched Maxwell yet? I mean, Epstein's dead, right? And they can easily just get rid of Maxwell. But why not? Why are they keeping her still alive?
Because it's so high profile. We're all talking about it nonstop. And if that does happen at this point, then it's over. Then there's going to be an outcry. There's enough of an outcry now. But if something happens to this woman at this point, that's one. Second, I believe that she was a little smarter. She was a step ahead. I think she made copies of things. I think she safeguarded herself. She had her lawyers, attorneys tell them they're safeguarded. And I believe there's tapes in different locations if something happens to her.
Do you think President Trump will pardon her?
It's a tough call because of I don't think so, actually, because it involves children. I think if it involves something else and she gave some testimony, I think President Trump's mindset is because it's young kids. But on the other hand, if she's giving up men that have been prostituting girls and who knows what else they're doing to them, hurting them, killing them, drugging them, there's so many kids that are missing that maybe they're involved with that. They're powerful men. Maybe she can help. So, it's a tough call.
You think the Democrats are silent because they know that they have people in their party that's on that list?
Oh, 100%. Democrats are screaming and yelling constantly. And when you talk about President Clinton's 28 times there, I'm curious if anybody else was there, like Obama or whoever else. But they're definitely, they're the loudest in the room always. So for them not to be talking, they're protecting illegal immigrants that are killing and raping girls and everyone else. They're not quiet about anything. So for them to be quiet, they must have a long list that was at Epstein Island.
You think this is the biggest cover-up of our lifetime?
This is the biggest cover-up in our lifetime, and the crimes against President Trump makes Watergate look like a water pistol. These are the two, biggest cases ever in the history of our country, I believe.
A lot of people want to accuse Donald Trump of being on that list, and that's the reason why they're not releasing that list. What do you think on that?
That's ridiculous. These are people that are, stupid, naive, the Trump haters, because like I just said, if he was even near that island, the Democrats would have abused him so he couldn't run for presidency again. That would have been the first thing they leaked, blurted out, and everything else. But also you have Epstein's lawyer that came forward and said President Trump was the only one and the first one that gave information against Epstein. And also he was very verbal and kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago as soon as it happened. So these are ridiculous. They had a fine-tooth comb up his rear end the whole time, going after him for every possible thing. This would have been the first thing and only thing to go after him if that was even close to being true.
What do you think about all these weird paintings inside Epstein's house in Manhattan? I mean, he's got one of Bill Clinton in a dress. He's got another one of Bush with like two towers behind him. Are these secret signals, or what do you think about these? Why would you have something like that in your house?
I don't know, maybe Hunter Biden painted them. So, who knows? This is some of the things that are in the background of this stuff. I mean, it's insulting. Like I said, I'm joking about Hunter Biden, but it's really not a joke because look what he did. Look what they did with these paintings. Everything is on there. There's a two-tier justice system in this country, and we know it. And they, not only the arrogance of the way they went after Trump shows it. So the rest of the world is very aware of what's going on with the justice system in this country. It's not fair. We know it's not fair anymore. Everybody used to have the belief that it was fair until President Trump exposed it to the world. And I don't know. I mean, it's a mystery of, how many powerful people are on that island that they won't let go of that list. It's got to be some serious powerful people around the world, not just this country. I think that people start to think it's just here. I think it was from around the world.
Yeah, I've heard that they had names from Saudi Arabia. They have Britain. A lot of powerful people all over the planet that's on that list. And I think that's what they're trying to preserve.
I think it's the international, ramifications that may be the issue here, not just because it's involved some powerful people here and billionaires and judges and who else knows, senators or whoever else.
You think it's out of Trump's hands right now? You think it's more powerful than Trump?
Yeah. I think, he has a little bit of, not a little, he has a lot of pull and say, and but not exclusive where he has the ability just to take and say here. We have a strong deep state that we're all seeing. And if people are naive still to not understand what's going on here and the wars that they wanted, and I'm not a big believer of 911. So, that goes into something completely different. We had our CIA that had surveillance on those guys prior to that ever happening. I just am not buying it. So years ago, I would have never said that. But as you get older and as you learn things and you live life, you start seeing different things. And without that happening, we don't attack Iraq and Saddam Hussein and on and on and on. There's always a bigger picture. And they seem to like to sacrifice certain things, deep state, for what they want or think is correct. No different than my belief of what went on medically around this country recently.
And to elaborate on the deep state, a lot of people are kind of skeptical that there's even a deep state. What do you think? I mean, how truthful is that when you talk about a deep state, and what is that exactly?
It's a government within the government that's entrenched in our legal system, in a law enforcement. I think Obama was one of the worst things that ever happened to this country. He weaponized DEA, FBI, CIA, NSA. He weaponized it all. Department of Defense. He destroyed this country, I think, in my opinion, intentionally. It's a joke to believe, and anybody stupid enough to think that Joe Biden from a basement can campaign and get more black votes than Obama did is another ridiculous thing to say. And the intrusion and the CIA, which signed 51 signatures about the Hunter Biden laptop. I can go on that what they knew was a lie, admitted it after the election, so it was election interference. Zuckerberg admitted that the FBI came to him and basically threatened him, lied to him, persuaded him, influenced him. So this is all an influence against the fairness of our election. So there is no integrity of what they've done to this country.
And while we're doing this interview, the FBI raids ex-National Security Advisor John Bolton's home for classified documents. What do you think that is about?
Well, I think Bolton, he did a lot of talking. I think he was involved. Somebody got to him prior to the election. He also tried to, no different than Chris Christie was campaigning. No, he couldn't win. He was just out there as a puppet for the Communist Democratic Party to try to bash President Trump. So I think that, these guys are going to have to all pay their dues for picking a losing horse. And in my eyes, illegally what they've done and jumped in with the deep state. When you see Cheney's aligning with the Democratic Party, something's wrong. This is the same guy they called an animal, a beast, a murder machine, everything that they called him, a warmonger, and all of a sudden they're all teaming up together. Obviously, there's the deep state.
Is there any way to eradicate the deep state? Is there a way to completely get rid of these guys?
The way everybody's doing it now, the more we all talk about it, President Trump brought it to the forefront. You have J.D. Vance, you have some good Americans, you have Governor DeSantis in Florida, you have some strong people that are outspoken now, and they're not quiet. You have guys like Peter Navarro, General Flynn. You have Carlson, Dr. Carlson. So you have different people that are outspoken now about some of the things that went in. Carson, excuse me, that are outspoken about against the deep state. So if people know what's going on, and then you have good people now that are in leadership roles, like Patel, Kesh Patel, that came into the FBI, Dan Bongino. You have different people that love this country, love our veterans. So when you disrespect this country, you disrespect every guy like yourself that sacrificed their life for this country.
Talk to us about your final thoughts on Maxwell. What's her future like? What's going to be the future for her?
I'd love to see them give her a deal and let her talk and bring it out. Let her talk about the surveillance tapes that were on those properties and where she thinks and who has them, because somebody has them. And to talk about exactly what went on there. You don't need the grand jury minutes. You don't need anything. You just need her, and she can give hundreds of names, and they'll corroborate the names that she gives. So I'd like to see them give her an opportunity to talk. She's not, in the bigger picture, she's not that important. The important part is to stop some of these very powerful people to keep abusing kids, because that's still going on somewhere else now.
Do you think the American people are ready for the Epstein files? I mean, I think some of those things on there could be overwhelming for some people to handle.
Well, I like when Putin in Russia said, we're fools here in America, think we live in a free country, that your president is being picked for you. I mean, the truth is, after we've seen what they did to President Trump, he was an outsider coming in, and they didn't want them to break up the play for pay schemes. And it's incredible what they're doing around the world, throwing billions and trillions into these, these crazy funds, NGOs and everything else for kickbacks that are going on, the wars that go on for money. He exposed it all, President Trump. This is why they want to kill him.
All right. Any final thoughts?
No, just watch our videos. I'm doing a new movie called Pony. That'll be out shortly. A documentary will be out this year, I believe. My books are out there, order my baseball bats, and that's it.